I'm not a historian. I'm just a person who reads, and luckily I have the internet, so I do a lot of reading on the internet.
Can't get you out of my head.
Hello! Welcome back to another Windowside Chat with moi, Tahira. So the topic of impeachment is clearly very divisive. When it comes to Donald Trump and this impeachment inquiry, I think the best way to really start understanding why it's important is to look at the history of Ukraine. It's been inhabited since the BC times. Though there have always been people there, Ukraine as a nation is a new concept because it's always been fought over. There's always been some sort of conflict going on in their region. Historically, the Ottomans, the Polish and Lithuanians, and the Austrian, Hungarians, and the Russians all fought over the territory that is now Ukraine. It wasn't until the 18th century that an independent sort of kind of nation, the Cossack region, it was called, was established. But that was very short-lived, and that territory was divided between Poland and Russia. It wasn't until the 1940s that Ukraine became part of the USSR, the Soviet Union. They did not get their independence until 1991. You do the math, very new country, and anyone who understands the history of nation building, it's very difficult. We are a fairly new nation in comparison to others like there's an entire war going on in the region of Donbass. Ukrainians die every single week. So let's do a bit of backtracking. So 1991 was when Ukraine got its independence from the USSR. That entire region is made up of a bunch of new nations that have really fought throughout history to establish their own statehood. A lot of this nation building that happened in the Eastern Bloc happened along the lines of ethnicity and then nationality. If we fast forward to about 2010, that's where things become a bit shaky for Ukraine. When Viktor Yanukovych was in power, he decided that he wanted to establish more of a controlled democracy, and he did so by trying to eliminate a lot of his political opponents. He started to pledge more loyalty to Russia. It's no surprise then that corruption continued. Not only was Yanukovych very corrupt and self-dealing, he pocketed about $40 billion while he was president. A lot of his associates were the same, and he allowed people to kind of have their way with the country and left the people to fend for themselves. Ukraine's economy is not very strong. They have always struggled with their economy. So that is just something that persisted under Yanukovych, and people finally got so sick and tired of it that a revolution occurred in 2014, and it's called the Revolution of Dignity. And it saw the people overthrow Yanukovych and form the new government, have elections, but the conflict still continued. Pro-Soviet factions decided to really make noise and have a bunch of demonstrations and really mobilize to show that People like Yanukovych still had a stronghold over the country. Even though Yanukovych was outed in 2014, the annexation of Crimea also occurred in 2014, and the annexation was to Russia. Very clear here that the Soviet Union, Russian stronghold was still very tight at this point, even though the people overthrew Yanukovych and said, we want real democracy, we want real reform, and we want to end corruption in our government. Now enter the current president, who was democratically elected, Volodymyr Zelensky. He is involved in the current impeachment inquiry because Donald Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, began to go on Ukrainian television and suggest that Trump wanted investigations into Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company, I believe, and the Bidens, who, you know, Joe Biden was vice president under President Obama. Biden's son, Hunter, worked for Burisma and was on the board of that company. Does have a questionable history. So I'm going to leave this here, but if you watch my next video, Impeachment Part 2, you will get to learn more about the timeline that the House of Representatives is currently learning about in hearings to decide if they want to impeach Donald Trump. So I hope that you learned a lot about Ukraine. Catch me in my next one.
Can't get you out of my head. Thinking about the words that you said.